Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel .NET-Dev-Journey with Jacob. And today is the day 8 of my journey to becoming a professional developer. In the last video, we discussed about persistence and reliability and how I applied that to my simple banking project, which I've pushed to my Git repo, and the link will be in my description of this video, so you can click on the link, clone the project, run it, and then just play around with it and see how it works. So today we are going to be discussing about exceptions and how to handle exceptions. But before we dive into it, I would like to say every system, a reliable system, I mean to say, has to be able to handle errors or unexpected behaviors consistently, because things happen. There might be issues that might occur while the program is executing or being executed, and a reliable system should be able to handle any error that occurs. So, what does exceptions really mean? Exceptions is said to be described as errors or unexpected behaviors that is encountered while executing a program. So, that being said, how do we handle exceptions? Though before we go into that, we should know that there are various kinds of exceptions. There are exceptions that are expected, and there are exceptions that are not expected, or we can say common and uncommon exceptions. And I'll give an example. For instance, let's say we are building an application and we expect users' input. We expect to take input from the user and then probably manipulate those data, stored data, and peradventure display some information to the user. So there's common exceptions that should be expected. For instance, while taking a user input, a user might enter the wrong input. A user might forget to um, fill in information for a particular field. For instance, if a user is to register and fill in their information, a user might enter the first name, might forget to enter other names if they are, if there's a field for that. The user might forget to enter their phone number, or peradventure might enter a wrong email, an invalid email. These are, some of the errors that are expected from the users, and these are not serious exceptions or serious issues because they are expected. But then when we get to the um, persistence issue, for example, like a repo that handles saving and loading of data from a file from a database, and maybe at the click of the save button, where when the information is supposed to be saved in the database, and all of a sudden there is no permission to write data into the database, then that is a serious problem, and the system needs to shout, or probably um, the system cannot read from file, or maybe all of a sudden the file is misplaced, is lost, does not exist. These are serious exceptions, and in order to you know retain, to sustain the trust of the users, the system needs to be able to handle these exceptions in a way that it should not be chaotic for the users, and it will not create panic for the users, because if exceptions like this get out to the users and probably they are seeing a stack trace information or something, or exception kind of thing, they might start to panic and lose their trust in the system. So that's why I said from the beginning that any reliable system should be able to handle exceptions properly and handle errors properly. So if we look at Microsoft Learn, we'll see some of the exception itself is a class. I said from the beginning of this journey, I said .NET structures and organizes its data, its program in classes, makes use of classes. So, and exception is also a class that has, different, I would say, that has a lot of children because they all inherit from the exception parent class. And these are some of the properties here. We can see, oh, where is this? I think I made, oh, sorry, I'm trying to see if I can see some of the properties. Exception. No, that's not what I'm looking for. Just bear with me. I want to show us some. Where is this? Just look for it now. Oh, okay. Yeah, here I have them. So these are some of the exception types, the common exceptions that we know. And here we have the index out of range exception, the null reference exception, invalid exception, operation exception, argument, and the meaning, the description, when to use them and when not to use them. They are all here. So let's just quickly go. I just wanted to show us these are their various forms of, exceptions to throw in a system, and I'm going to show us how exception works. So, for example, let's say we have an array of integer values. So we are saying array of numbers. So I'm declaring array and passing my data into it. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that's good. And now, say for instance, we can wrap this around the try catch method because we are trying to throw an exception or trying to catch. Yeah, we are trying to catch an exception. We are not throwing an exception, but we are trying to catch an exception. So we are trying to, let's say, we are trying to manage an error here that could probably, arise. And one of the error that could probably arise from integers or array operations, let me put it that way, is index out of range. And I will explain what that means. So for instance, let's say we want to in case you're using VS Code, I would suggest you disable the auto suggestion, like auto code suggestion, so that it can aid our learning better instead of using AI, just to suggest code and all of that. Yeah, it is good, but just to be able to learn the code properly. For now, as beginners, I would suggest we put that off, and you can see this is my settings. It's off here. And if you want to get how to do that, you can just come to your file, you come down to preferences, you click on settings, then you can search for different things here. You can say suggestion, and you have different stuff like edited accepted suggestion on enter. You can see it's off, and you can look up you know on Google for that, how to disable auto suggestion um on Visual Studio Code. So it's going to give you the direction information on how to do that. So I'm just trying to show you how you can get there on your Visual Studio Code. But let's continue what we are discussing here. So let's say I want to write um, a particular value from the array of numbers. So I'm saying control dot write line print, let's say, as we all know, array are indexed from 0. So if we start from 0, we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's say I want to index the last number, the last value in the array. So I'm using index 5 because that's the last index for that array. So let's see how this works. So I'm catching. Okay, let me just use exception here. I'm going to explain something to us. Exception EX. So I can also say console dot write line. I think it should be write line EX dot message. So what I'm saying here is write the message, display the message of whatever exception you're catching here. So let's run this code and let's see what the outcome will be. Let's wait for it. And the expected value should be 6 because we are printing the last index, the last value from this array. And yes, we can see it has outputted 6 because we are referencing the index of this value, and the index is 5, indexing from 0. So now we know this is a normal operation, but what if there is an error, a mistake, and let's say this is not up to length of 5, because here, or length of 6, let me put it that way, and here we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we are trying to reference a value of index 5 which does not exist. So obviously that's going to be an error, right? Or let's do this so that we can understand better. Let's comment this out. So I've commented out this the try and catch block, and let's just run the program and see what will be. Yes, it's saying unhandled exception system.indexOutOfRangeException. This index out of range exception is an exception that is peculiar to operations like this, operations that deals with indexing. So any operation that deals with indexing, like arrays, like maybe lists, and all these collections like that, it is an exception that is unique to operations like this, and it's saying index was outside the bounds of the array. Index was outside the bounds of the array, which means that the index we are referencing does not exist here, because we are trying to say this array is an array of length 6, whereas is an array of length 5, because we only have 5 values in it. And if it's an array of length 5, we can only give it an indexing of 4, because the indexing starts from 0. So 0 to 4 is length of 5. But here we are saying we want to reference a value of index 5, which falls to length of 6, and that does not exist. So that is why we are running into this error, because if we count from here 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so we stop at 4. So but 5 is beyond 4, so it is out of this range, because we can only access the index between 0 and 4. But 5 is outside of the range. That's why we are having index was outside the bounds of the array, because the lower bound of this array is 0, the upper bound of the array is 4. I believe you understand now. So now let's comment out this. Let's yes, release this comment. Let's uncomment it, I mean to say, and then let's run it again and see how to undo stuff like this. So take for example, we've built a project, and while the user is trying to do something on the system just crashed and threw an exception like that, and the user can see the stack trace. You see, it's going to cause a kind of panic, because most users do not understand the terms of the system. So, but for a developer understands. For a non-technical person, just that a user would see this and will panic that, oh my God, what's going on? But now we can see we undid the exception, because the system does not have to crash, but we have index was outside the bounds of the array. So we are printing out this, but to make it more better, or to make it better, pardon my English, we can say index out of range exception EX, because we know the particular error, like we know the expected error that could happen from this operation. We know the expected error that could come up from this operation, and the expected error is index out of range. So instead of just leaving it at exception, we can make it more explicit, and then just do this, and let's run it again. Let's say now we want to reference index of 6, which obviously is out of bound. So let's run this again and see how that works. Let's wait for it. So there we have it. Index was outside the bounds of the array. But now let's come back to an index that exists inside the array. 3 is within the bounds of this array. So let's run this again. I'm just trying to let us see how this works so that we can be sure. It's saying, oh, sorry, I didn't save it. I needed to save that before I actually run the program. Yeah, so we have 4 there. So this is within the range, but 5 and 6 are outside of the range. So that was why we got the error. But we can see how to undo this error instead of just leaving it and allowing the system to crash just because of an error that is expected to happen. So just like I use the analogy of the user inputs. So let's assume that, okay, we want to take input of the age of the user. So we are saying uh, okay, let's say int age, and here we are saying console dot write line, or let's use control dot write instead of write line, because I want the user age to be on the same line with the prompt. Kindly enter your age. So, and here we are saying while should I use while? Okay, yeah. While not int dot try pass try, okay, the P needs to be in capital letter. Try pass okay. Let's say should I use age? Trying to see okay. Try pass console dot read line out age and let's say age age less than 18. So we are saying console dot write line invalid age, try again. Invalid age, try again. And then we are saying console dot write line your, okay, let me use string interpolation here. Your age has been accepted, is accepted. Okay, let's do congratulations. Your age is accepted. Or let's say congratulations, you're eligible to vote. So I'm just playing with words here. So let's see. This is a way of also handling exception. So instead of catching it, we have we have created a way of handling the exception so that the user gets to see the information on the screen, prompting them that there is an error and they need to enter the correct age, prompting them, letting them know that they've entered the wrong age and they need to, enter the valid age. Because, for instance, what we are saying here is, if, for example, peradventure, whatever the user is submitting as their age, if it cannot be passed as an integer, then, and it is not, and age is also less than 18. If this cannot be passed as an integer, or peradventure it passes as an integer, but it is less than 18, then we are saying the system should reject the age. So, which means we are restraining this system only to users that are above 18. So let's run the code and let's see what will happen. Enter age. Let's do this. Invalid. Try again. Let's say 2. It's saying, congratulations, your 2 is accepted. Okay, let's say this should not be the case. Or age is less than 18. That should be the condition. Sorry. Let's close this. Let's do this and see. You can see invalid age. Try again because it's less than 18. So let's do 18 and see. Congratulations, your 18 is accepted. Your age is accepted. So let's run this program again. So let's be careful about logic. You could see that when I use and, age is less than 18. So we are saying it should pass, but if it is greater than 18, it should fail. That was the previous condition. So we should be careful about the logic we are using, because I meant to say if this passes, or if the age is less than 18, then do this. If none of this condition is true, then we have this. Okay, let me change this. Congratulations, you are and allow. So I'm just playing with words, just an example. So I'm closing the application. I want to rerun it again. So let's say I'm entering, like I forgot to enter the age and I moved to another field. It's saying invalid entry. If I'm entering alphabets, invalid entry. If I do this, invalid entry. If I say 4y, invalid entry. If I put an age less than 18, invalid entry. If I put 17, invalid entry. But from 18 on upward, congratulations, you are 19, please come in. So I use this in as an example. Let's say, for a club, you're not allowed to go into a club if you're not 18, for instance, if that's the rule. And let's say the bouncer is at the entrance and checking people in, and then is checking the ID and sees that, oh, you are less than 18, the bouncer will bounce you off. But if the person's age is 18 above, then you can say, oh, congratulations, you are so age, please come in. So now we get the logic behind exception handling. So we can choose different ways of, to handle exception, but most importantly, we should know where and when to throw exceptions, where to handle exceptions. So in cases like this, this is majorly used to validate um, the UI, like validate entry from the from the UI, that's presentation layer. So, but the way exception is being handled from in the, for example, for a domain driven design. So the way exception is handled from inside an object or in a domain is different from how it is handled in the application layer and how it is handled in the presentation layer. So in the presentation layer, whatever exception is being thrown from any of this, maybe the business, from the domain, or from the application, or from the infrastructure, which is the repo, it has to be handled in a way that the user, from at the presentation layer, it is controlled at the presentation layer in such a way that when it is being outputted to the user, it is communicated in, in simple words that will not cause panic for the user. So what I mean to say is the user must not see the stack trace at any point at all. For example, if you are throwing an exception of argument null exception, so which means that the argument we are passing in is a null argument. For instance, let's go to the project that I pushed to my GitHub, the simple banking system. So now we are going to look at the kinds of uh, exceptions that can be thrown, and where an exception should be thrown, the boundaries and all of that. But I'll quickly give an analogy. So let's say we have a shop, we have a shopkeeper, we have a rule book, we have a notebook. What else? What else? What else? What else? Okay, yeah. So the rule book is the book that contains the rule on how the shop is operated. The rule book contains information that let us know if a thing is valid, if it is not valid. And we can say the rule book is like the business rule in the domain. It contains the rules that guides the actions, things that are permitted, things that are not permitted in a domain. So for instance, let's take customer. This is a domain. This customer is a domain. And in this customer, as you can see, here is not a professional or a standard way of doing this, because in this place there is no rule at all on these properties. There is no rule. So let's say last name is null or white space. It has been passed directly to it. which should not happen. Although it is being controlled in the presentation layer, in the, like get user input string, and we can see here it is being controlled here, just like the example I gave here, that while this is this invalid age, but we cannot trust the validation at the UI, the presentation layer alone, because let's assume that that is bypassed. Then it means that if the UI layer has been bypassed, then unwanted details, unwanted information will get into our domain, and that is not what we want. That is not supposed to happen in a reliable system, in a system that wants to have the trust of its users. That should not be allowed at all. So the rule book is guiding the operation of the shop. Then the shopkeeper is the application layer that interacts with both the customer and the rule book. For example, if a customer wants to buy alcohol, the shopkeeper is to check the rule book that, okay, what is permitted? Is this user or this customer above 18? Oh, it says that it takes the input of the user, passes it to the rule book, and once it gets to the rule book sends back information that, oh, this customer is below 18 and is not permitted to get an alcohol. And then the application layer, which is the shopkeeper, explains to the customer that, oh, we are sorry, and we only sell alcohol or drinks like that to customers that, or to a person that is above 18. And because you are not above 18, we are sorry. I'm afraid we won't be able to sell to you. You understand? So it is good to always validate input at the presentation layer, which is the UI level, but then we can't trust solely on that because it could be bypassed. So therefore, there is a need for the domain to contain its own business rules that guides the operation of the domain. And take, for instance, let's say we are trying to create a null customer. There's a way for us to handle these things. There's need for us to throw an exception to show that, oh, this is not allowed. So that is why it is always good to define, business rules in the domain as well. So the business rules in the domain serves as a pointer for valid or invalid. So if it is valid, it allows it to happen. If it is invalid, it rejects it, regardless of wherever it's coming from. You understand the point and the logic. So let's go back to the customer and see now, how do we apply business rule to the domain here? Because now we don't want um an empty last name, a null value, you know, and we want the user to know that this is required. It is also required. So, and we need to, you know, set the rules here so that we won't have a wrong customer detail, or so that the security will not be bypassed. And to do that, we can say, for instance, here, we can do something like, if not string dot is null or empty or white space, let's use white space or white space, then we are saying null or white space last name, then last name, if string, okay, now if string is null white space, you are saying, okay, through arguments exception, and what do we want to pass to it? Valid last name required. So we can do something like this. So we can do something like this. True, okay. It's supposed to be new. So we can have something like this, that okay, if the string is a null value or a white space value, then through this exception that valid last name is required. So it means that the user has not entered a valid last name. So through this exception, but if this is not the case, then take in the user parameter here and pass it into the last name property. I hope we understand. So we can just, copy this, use it down here and edit. So we can say other names, and here we also change it to, or should we remove this? Okay, let's leave that. Or we can always remove this and just leave the message, because this is the message. So we can remove this, but we can leave that too if we want to. But the major objective here and the major goal is that the message is passed to the user and the message does not cause panic. I hope you understand my point. So that is the essence of this. And email as well. So we are changing this to email. Quiet. I think there's still one thing that can be done to this email, but I'm going to be showing that to us later. Because there's a format for email, there are invalid emails. So this is just for a normal text anyways, but we are going to come to that because if we look at the user input here, there's a validation for email somewhere, decimal string, get user integer. Yeah, you can see, though I use the mail address um, mail address library function of, you can see the mail address is a class anyways of the .NET framework, or the of .NET. So, but it is good to use this, but I think while I was making my research on how to go about the mail address, there is a regex uh, option too for creating validation for mail address, and I think there was another option kind of, but I just stick to this because it's easy and I don't have to start, writing algorithm to writing a new model or code to to validate email address. So yeah, I just stick with the inbuilt mail address class of .NET. So but I'm just letting us know that yeah, that can also be introduced in a way to better enforce security for this domain. And here, so this is just how to throw stuff like this. So what can we do? Because now we are throwing this exception, but we also need to undo these exceptions. We need to undo them. And I think if we come to the account opening section, account opening, that should, okay, this is infrastructure, that should be application layer, account opening service. So if we open this here, we can now undo that exception from here. For instance, if you look at the open savings accounts or open savings account and open savings account, and we are passing in customer. At this point, we are adding a customer. We are adding a customer here, but this operation depends on having a valid customer. If the customer is not valid, then every other thing here will be contaminated. So, and remember, in our customer domain, we've set some ground rules. So how do we undo these exceptions that we've thrown here? How do we undo these exceptions? And we know that one of the exceptions that was thrown, we have the argument exception, the argument null exceptions, and the likes. So here, instead of using name of account number, we can also write maybe a proper we can put a message here, for example, unable to link account. Please try again. Unable to link account, try again. So now we can come here to the account opening service and we can undo this error. And how can we undo it? Remember, we use try catch the other time, so we can introduce a try catch here as well. We can say this and can catch whatever exception we want to catch here. So we can say now here we cannot just write a message. I mean, we can say console dot write line here in the application layer. We can only use console dot write line, console dot read line in the presentation layer, the UI. So peradventure, maybe let's go to the UI. There's something I just want to show to us. This is 49 minutes. I want to wrap this video up by exactly 1 hour, before 1 hour if that's possible. So let's go to this UI. So let's say there's a method here that peradventure we've written, and we are saying public static string. Should it be string, or let's say, okay, void show exception message, and we are putting in string message in here, and here we are saying console.writeLine message, for instance, just an example, to cite an example. And then we are coming back to this account opening service to say user input outputs dot show exception message, and we are saying here ex dot message. So but here we are saying string open savings account. So what we can do is we can, because here the error we are trying to catch is particularly based on this customer, because we are trying to create a new customer. So we can just take all this out from here and put it here. So we wrap this operation inside this try catch. So once we have this, it gets here because we are throwing an exception. So since we are catching the exception here, all this will not be executed because we have gotten an exception from here. I don't know if you understand that, but what can we do? I'm trying to see if, let's see if, because I'm playing around code, so I might have changed a lot of things here in this program, so I don't know if this will work, but let's see if there is no exception. Okay, let's try it and see. We have open an account, and to open an account we have to enter. So let's say I'm leaving this as null. It's saying okay, invalid, try again. I can't use that. So let's say I'm using Olide, other names, Shade, 1990, 09, address, Shade.com. Let's see. Oh, Shade.com. That's not supposed to work. There's an error there. Shade.com. Which accounts savings? I'm going to have to look into that. So he took in Shade.com. You can see one of the reasons why I said we can't completely trust the UI, because it's not supposed to take Shade.com or Sage.com, because it does not follow a proper email format. Can you see some of the things why we said? But let's say this has been enforced. Let's say it has been enforced in the domain here. That is not going to take that error. If it has been enforced here in this domain. So I'm going to I'm going to research more on that, and probably by tomorrow on the next video I will quickly show us how I've been able to correct that, work on that, and yeah. So we'll have that explained in the next video. But for today, it's just to show us how to throw exceptions and how to undo exceptions, and to throw an exception, to handle an exception in such a way that it does not cause panic when the message is being displayed to the user. So like I said here, we threw exceptions here from the domain but the application handles how the exception is managed, because we can see we caught the exception here, catch exception. Then how do we display the message? Because we can't use console.writeLine, console.readLine in the application layer or in the domain layer, which is also part of the application layer as well. So we can't use that in the application layer. It has to come down to the UI, to the presentation layer. And from the presentation layer, we created a method that could help us undo that properly. And here we said, okay, this is the user input output. So we created a method that shows the exception message to the user. And in here, because here is a presentation layer, we can have console.writeLine, console.readLine, and all of that. So we caught the exception, we passed it into this method in the presentation layer, and we managed how the message is displayed to um to the user. I hope we are able to understand that correctly. So here, that's just the logic behind exception handling. And in the next video, I'm going to show us the workings, because I would have refactored my code properly to I would have implemented the exception handling properly and integrated it into the simple banking project, which I pushed into my repo. So that means I'm going to be having another commit, and that is how this journey will be. So the more I learn new things, I try to implement it and integrate it into the banking projects, banking management system projects that I worked on. So I continue to apply new things and continue to implement it, integrating it into the project. And by day 14, I'm also going to be making or building another project, designing another project, putting all that we have also learned into practice. And that is how we'll keep going. So I think per week we'll be having um, different projects to showcase what we've learned so far. So thank you for joining. Please, be free to put your comments, what you think, down in the comment box below. I want you to like this video and click on the subscribe button, because as you do this, it also encourages me to, it motivates me to keep on going, and so that we keep having fun as we go on this journey. Please, so um do ensure you click on the subscribe button so that you can keep getting new videos as I upload them and post them on YouTube. And please like and share this video to help others that are also learning, that are in the learning phase, that needs encouragement, that needs a learning partner, so that we can get on this train together and become a professional developer. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.